Over the last 2 months, this reviewer has been totally captivated and engaged with perhaps the greatest massive multiplayer game currently available, and quite possibly the greatest MMO so far created. Of course, no discussion of MMOs is really complete without mentioning World of Warcraft, the MMO that dominated the genre for so long. World of Warcraft itself was a progression, an evolution from EverQuest, the first successful MMO to exist. WoW was born in an era where consoles were still in their infancy and internet gaming largely resided with the dominant PC gaming community. As the days of their greatest expansion, Wrath of the Lich King, began to fade, and despite many changes and novel new ideas, World of Warcraft began to look and feel dated. In its former years there had been a relatively smaller and friendly online community, but the game had been inundated with younger, less civil players, and many players who couldn't properly grasp the fundamentals of the game, at times littered with far too many spells and abilities. WoW had become overcomplicated and bloated, often requiring lots of additional third-party add-on software programs to make it reasonably playable. Many MMOs had been created since WoW's initial launch, and too often many would claim that a particular MMO was a WoW killer, yet none proved to be that. Even the online MMO of the book, that was the source for every role-playing game in existence, Lord of the Rings, was a poor mimic of WoW. Final Fantasy XIV was not the first online Final Fantasy that Square Enix had embarked on. Final Fantasy XI had gained a small but dedicated fan base, yet it wasn't a competitor to WoW, it was still very much a Final Fantasy game. As popular as WoW might have been, the Final Fantasy series was even more so. It seemed obvious that the most popular role-playing franchise in gaming history should move away from their predominantly single-player centric experiences and create an MMO. Final Fantasy XIV was going to be just that, but Square Enix was still tied to their approach to Final Fantasy XI and the way in which other entries in the series had been created. When Final Fantasy XIV Online was launched, it was nothing short of a disaster, with many reviewers and gamers at the time stating it was almost unplayable. Never mind being a WoW killer, what Square Enix had produced may very well have been a Final Fantasy killer. However, luckily, one man single-handedly saved not only Final Fantasy XIV, but arguably Final Fantasy as well. Naoki Yoshida, also known as Yoshi P, took over the reins of the production and did something almost unthinkable, something that most probably will never be replicated in gaming production history ever again. Whilst continuing to offer support and patching the mess that was Final Fantasy XIV Online, he led half of the design studio into production of a completely new MMO at the same time. A project that should have taken 4 to 5 years was completed in less than 2 years, and the result is simply one of the greatest online games of all time. Final Fantasy XIV AREALM Reborn is a gorgeous game to look at. The attention to detail is excellent. Whether you look at character animations or character models or level designs, cities, landscapes, sky spheres, particle effects use or other effect usage, foliage, meshes, variable weather and night-day cycles, or the variation of creatures and monsters, or the contrast in scale in different environments, from expansive outdoor landscapes to claustrophobic dungeons. Every aspect of design and implementation is of the highest level. In terms of game mechanics, Final Fantasy XIV goes out of its way to be as easy to understand and as instructive as possible, introducing the range of abilities and skills for the player gradually through a well-paced leveling progression that, unlike WoW, places you front and centre as the hero of the story. Perhaps most importantly, the ability to play Final Fantasy XIV on a PlayStation 4 controller by using the ingenious cross-bar system has in itself lent the game to many players who would not have touched it. Being free of the limitations of the keyboard and mouse, which are inferior for fluid control of character movement, and instead being able to utilise joysticks for navigation and movement, is a game changer. Overarching all of this is the central story. It is best described perhaps as pure Final Fantasy, so it might be a little too corny for some, but it is absolutely intriguing. Of course, there are many stories in this MMO, some more obvious to find than others. Most remarkably though, Final Fantasy XIV, despite being a game where you can freely socialise, group up and join free companies, clubs for want of a better word, it remains at its heart a single player centric game. The emphasis is on you to do what you want to do. All multiplayer activities are matchmaking. There are no exclusive activities only for pre-made groups, and both pre-made groups and single players can be mixed together in the majority of those activities. Above all, Final Fantasy XIV always feels rewarding. Whether you are embarking on relatively straightforward quests and dungeons, or embarking on some of the much more elaborate and grueling quests or raids, the players never feel underwhelmed or cheated at the end of these activities. The sheer number and range of activities, quests and multiplayer experiences is overwhelming at first, but whichever pathway you choose to forge your way forward, you will always have the opportunity to experience everything the game offers. This even filters down to the class system, or jobs as they are called in Final Fantasy XIV, whereby even though you are able to create multiple characters, you will only ever need only one, as one character can have all of the jobs available in the game and can seamlessly change from one job to another by simply changing the weapon or tool that they have equipped. In this MMO, you can be all of the tank classes, all of the DPS classes, and all of the healer classes, as well as every single crafting class. This one feature alone relegates WoW to the past. Since the launch of Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn, there have been 3 major expansions: Heavensward, Stormblood and Shadowbringers. These will be reviewed in further videos. Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn is a stunning, magnificent game that will richly entertain and reward players in equal measure. It is, more succinctly, the MMO experience reborn. Pure brilliance.